What do Antarctica and Australia have in common? Both rank among the driest continents on Earth. Antarctica takes the top spot, but Australia isn't far behind. In fact, since it's the driest inhabited continent, many would argue Australia deserves first place. While there's no official list ranking the most barren lands by area, Australia would almost certainly earn a top position. The continent's soil is a nightmare for farmers, dry, nutrient-poor, and unforgiving. Finding even a small patch of fertile land often feels like a treasure hunt. Despite these challenges, Australia continues to produce some of the world's most vital crops, like rice. And here's where things get interesting. Scattered throughout Australian rice fields, you'll find creatures with names like Charax quadricarinatus. No, they're not some futuristic farming robot or mystical spell, they're crayfish. And Australians are releasing them by the millions right into rice fields. But why? To understand that, take a look at a map of Australia. You'll notice a vast, dark mass dominating the center, desert land. While it's not identical to the Sahara, it's no less difficult when it comes to agriculture. Much of the country suffers from severe water shortages. Only relatively small strips along the coast are suited for farming. The rest is an ongoing challenge. Most of Australia receives less than 24 inches of rainfall per year, and in the central regions, some areas get as little as 2 inches. The national average hovers around 16 inches, far below the global average of 37 inches. This shortage has real consequences. One of the most glaring examples is the Murray-Darling Basin, Australia's largest river system, which has experienced several major droughts, most notably the Millennium Drought from 1997 to 2009. In 2006, rainfall in the basin dropped 40 to 60% below normal, marking the lowest levels recorded since 1900. Only 4 inches fell instead of the usual 15. At its worst, the river system's flow dropped to just 40% of its typical volume, leaving rivers and lakes critically low. Lake Menindee, part of the basin, nearly vanished during peak drought, transforming from a vast body of water into a dusty crater. Similar things happen with Lake Torrens, a salt lake in South Australia, which depends entirely on rare rainfall to exist at all. Rice, being a water-intensive crop, is particularly vulnerable. Fields sometimes dry up completely due to yet another water shortage. But the problem goes beyond water. Australia's soil has been left to weather for millions of years without much geological activity, like volcanic eruptions, which normally replenish nutrients. The result? Extremely infertile land. Phosphorus is especially scarce, and that's a big deal. Without it, plants can't generate the energy needed to grow, resulting in stunted or failed crops. Some Australian plants, like Banksias, have evolved special roots that release organic acids to extract phosphorus from the soil, something most crops can't do. This shows just how long the soil has been nutrient deficient. Other essential elements, zinc, potassium, sulfur, copper, and boron, are also in short supply. Adding to the issue, Australia's dry, hot climate slows down the natural decomposition of leaves and other organic material. That limits the buildup of humus, which is vital for healthy soil. Without it, the soil has poor structure, low water retention, and low fertility. In many agricultural zones, organic carbon levels sit below 1 or 2%, while 3 to 6% is needed for stable fertility. Now imagine trying to grow rice in this environment. During the tinderbox drought from 2017 to 2019, irrigated rice production dropped by over 90% in southeastern Australia. In just 2 seasons, farmers suffered massive financial losses. That's where Charax quadricarinatus and other crayfish species enter the story, not just as residents, but as workers. These clawed helpers aren't thrown into the fields haphazardly. Farmers start by digging trenches around the rice fields using shovels or machinery. The trench size depends on the crayfish species and field conditions. These trenches are filled with water, and young crayfish are introduced. Afterward, rice is planted. Eventually, the entire field is flooded, connecting the paddies to the trenches and creating a perfect environment for the crayfish. Despite their tough appearance, crayfish are vulnerable to predators in the wild. The trenches give them a safe place to hide, build burrows, and lay eggs. Plus, the water in the trenches ensures they don't dry out. But what about the rice? Do crayfish destroy it? Fortunately, rice isn't on their menu. Instead, they feed on algae, insects, and other organic debris found in the field. Rice paddies are a buffet of fallen plant matter and invertebrates, perfect for crayfish. They eat, sleep, breed, and repeat, all while helping humans. Let's start with their burrows. These can reach depths of 12 inches and form a network that increases soil porosity by 12 to 18% depending on conditions. That means better water absorption, less surface evaporation, and more efficient use of limited water resources. Their digging also improves soil aeration, which is crucial for plant roots and beneficial soil microbes. In the flooded and oxygen-poor environment of a rice paddy, better aeration means healthier, stronger plants. But it doesn't stop there. Crayfish, after eating all that organic material, produce waste rich in phosphorus, nitrogen, and other nutrients, exactly what Australian soils are missing. Even better, the phosphorus in crayfish waste comes in a form that plants can absorb more easily. Scientific studies back this up. In rice fields using the rice-crayfish model, nitrogen content rose by 8.5 to 28.4% and phosphorus by 8.2 to 30.5% in the top 4 inches of soil. That means stronger shoots, better growth, and healthier crops. Crayfish even give the microbial life in the soil a boost. Enzyme activity, like urease and phosphatase, can increase by up to 71%. These enzymes break down nitrogen and phosphorus compounds into forms plants can absorb. The result? A stronger root system and up to 15% more above-ground plant growth in just the first season. And there's another upside. Australia spends heavily on synthetic fertilizers, which are both expensive and harmful to the environment. Crayfish create a natural, cost-free alternative. They also help control weeds and pests, reducing the need for herbicides and pesticides. These chemicals can damage the ecosystem, so replacing them with biological solutions improves both plant and human health. Crayfish don't just make farming more sustainable, they also make it more profitable. Let's say you have 2 rice fields. One uses traditional farming, the other uses the rice-crayfish model. A drought hits or rice prices fall. The traditional farmer takes a heavy loss. But the farmer using crayfish has a second crop, crayfish, that can be harvested and sold, softening the financial blow. Even when conditions are good, the rice-crayfish model brings in more income. In China's Hubei province, where this method is popular, a 2.5-acre rice-only field nets around $3,000. Add crayfish, and the same field earns over $8,000. Nearly triple the profit, with no added feed or fertilizer costs. In Australia, economic data is limited, but signs are promising. Live yabbies, local crayfish, can sell for $20 to $30 per 2 pounds wholesale. Demand is strong, and integrated farming could soon dominate the country's rice production. But crayfish aren't the only animals pitching in. In Western Australia's Great Southern region, Afrasia Hill Winery turned to birds, specifically Indian runner ducks and Muscovy ducks, for help controlling snails in their vineyards. Snails, which attack grapevines in the spring, are typically dealt with using chemical baits. But the winery took a natural approach. They released ducks into a test area, and the results were remarkable. Within a 100-foot radius, snails disappeared. In untreated areas, they had to keep using chemicals. The plan now is to raise the flock to 200 ducks to protect 25 acres of vineyard. Why not use chickens? Because chickens eat grapes. Ducks, on the other hand, prefer snails and grass, making them the perfect vineyard companions. Meanwhile, on the ground, goats are taking care of weeds. In Australia, invasive weeds cause millions of dollars in damage annually. Herbicides and manual weeding are costly and hard to implement on steep or remote land. One goat can eat around 20 pounds of weeds per day. Blackberry, broom, thistle, they love it all. Their nimble lips help them navigate thorny plants, and a herd of a dozen goats can clear an area the size of a 1-car garage in a day. In New South Wales, one farm has nearly eliminated herbicides by releasing 20 goats into weed-infested zones. The result, treatment costs down by 70% and improved pasture health, all in just one season. The goat solution became so popular, a rental service emerged. Farmers or even school gardens can now order mobile electric pens full of goats. Once the goats finish the job, they move to the next location. It's cheaper, more effective, and completely natural. And just like crayfish, goats produce nutrient-rich waste that boosts soil fertility. Unlike cows, goats eat the weeds and leave the good grass alone. Their waste is packed with nitrogen and phosphorus, natural fertilizer for depleted soils. Goats have even helped on major infrastructure projects. At a Sydney Metro site, 570 workers produced over 150,000 concrete segments for a 15-mile track. But they had help. 20 goats were brought in to clear weeds. The result? Less noise, lower emissions, and no pesticides needed. In the end, all these examples, from crayfish to ducks to goats, show that nature already has the answers to many of Australia's toughest farming challenges. These eco-friendly, cost-effective solutions reduce chemical use, improve soil health, and help maintain balance in the ecosystem. In other words, they're not just helpers, they're heroes. China's agricultural land is shrinking and fast. That may come as a surprise for a country that's been turning deserts green, tree by tree, acre by acre. But while environmental restoration is a long game, degradation moves quickly. Between industrial development, booming cities, and widespread pollution, China is losing valuable farmland every year. By the end of 2019, China's total arable land measured just under 494,000 square miles. That's a big number on paper, but it's a 6% drop from just a decade earlier, in 2009. The causes are clear: relentless urban expansion, growing industrial demands, inefficient farming practices, and serious environmental degradation. But China's response to this agricultural crisis includes a rather unexpected ally, the crayfish. Yes, crayfish, those small freshwater crustaceans with snapping claws. It sounds strange, even absurd, but these little creatures are playing an outsized role in not just revitalizing farmland, but also in fighting poverty and transforming rural economies. Their journey from exotic novelty to agricultural powerhouse is one of the most fascinating stories in modern farming. The species making waves in China is Procambarus clarkii, commonly known as the red swamp crayfish. It's native to the southern United States, not East Asia. In fact, for most of China's history, crayfish weren't even part of the local ecosystem or cuisine. So how did they get there? The introduction of crayfish dates back to the Second Sino-Japanese War between 1937 and 1945. At the time, crayfish were kept as pets by some Japanese, and many were brought along during the occupation of parts of China. From there, they slowly made their way into China's rivers, lakes, and rice paddies, spreading quietly, unnoticed by most. For decades, they remained relatively obscure. But by the early 1990s, the story started to change. A culinary trend began to take hold. Crayfish dishes, often spicy, stewed, or soaked in wine, gained popularity in restaurants and street stalls across China. The public couldn't get enough. It was a culinary explosion that no one saw coming. Today, China consumes over 90% of the world's crayfish supply. That's more than 1 million tons of crayfish devoured each year. With such massive demand, it was only a matter of time before farming operations ramped up. From small family-run ponds to massive industrial-scale farms, crayfish cultivation has become a national phenomenon. According to China's Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Affairs, crayfish farming was already significant back in 2007, with an annual output of 265,000 tons. Less than a decade later, in 2016, that number had more than tripled to 850,000 tons. Wild-caught crayfish added another 49,000 tons to the total. But the real boom was yet to come. By 2022, China's crayfish production reached a staggering 2.5 million tons. The entire industry was valued at over 369 billion yuan, or about 53 billion US dollars. That's more than the GDP of some small countries. Crayfish were no longer just a culinary trend. They had become a cornerstone of the rural economy. One standout example is Shui County, located in eastern China's Jiangsu province. Known as the crayfish capital of China, Shui has transformed its economy around these crustaceans. By 2025, the county had established 165,000 acres of eco-friendly crayfish farming zones. Over 210,000 residents, more than the population of Salt Lake City, work in crayfish-related industries. Even the crayfish themselves have evolved. Through selective breeding, local farmers developed a line of crayfish that grow larger and reach maturity faster than the original imports. This faster-growing strain can earn farmers an additional 500 yuan per mu, a Chinese land measurement equal to about 1/6 of an acre. It's a significant economic boost in rural areas where incomes are often limited. In Hubei province, another crayfish stronghold, the city of Xinjiang proudly boasts a 49-foot-tall crayfish statue, the tallest in the world, officially listed in the Guinness Book of Records. The city has become a tourist destination, often called the Eco-City of Crayfish, with restaurants, educational tours, and scenic farming zones all built around the industry. At one processing plant alone in Xinjiang, 500 workers handle 80 tons of crayfish in just a 10-hour shift. Multiply that by the hundreds of facilities scattered across China, and it becomes clear, this is not just a food item, it's a national enterprise. But perhaps the most fascinating development of all is how crayfish are being integrated directly into agriculture, specifically into rice farming. This method is known as integrated crayfish rice farming, and it's proving to be one of China's most promising sustainable farming innovations. The idea is simple yet ingenious. Farmers plant rice in their paddies as usual, but they also dig circular trenches around the fields. These serve as habitats for crayfish. After the rice is harvested, the leftover straw is left in the field, and the paddies are flooded, creating an ideal nursery for young crayfish. The straw provides warmth and shelter during cooler months and eventually decomposes, becoming food for the crayfish. As omnivorous scavengers, crayfish feed on detritus, decomposing plant material, and small aquatic organisms. Their constant foraging keeps the paddies clean and reduces pests. Meanwhile, crayfish waste acts as a natural fertilizer, releasing organic carbon, nitrogen, and potassium, essential nutrients for rice growth. And there's more. When crayfish die, their bodies decompose and further enrich the soil. This cycle significantly reduces the need for chemical fertilizers and pesticides, resulting in cleaner, healthier rice and less environmental pollution. A study published in the Chinese Journal of Ecological Agriculture monitored integrated crayfish rice systems from 2005 to 2015. The results showed that these systems significantly outperform traditional monoculture rice fields in terms of soil health, biodiversity, and yield. Before 2014, farmers would rotate between crayfish and rice on the same fields. But the introduction of mixed farming changed everything. By 2015, 93% of local farms in participating regions had adopted this integrated approach. According to a 2018 report by the Ministry of Agriculture, crayfish production in one city doubled in a single year, reaching 70,000 tons in 2017. This method is now widely seen as a way to maximize yields, increase rural incomes, and make use of less fertile soil, all without compromising environmental sustainability. As revolutionary as this farming method is, it's not without its downsides. First, growing rice and crayfish together isn't as easy as it might seem. It requires technical knowledge, careful planning, and precise water management. Crayfish are resilient, but they're also opportunistic feeders. If managed poorly, they can start damaging the rice crop they're meant to support. Then there's the issue of land use. To create permanent crayfish habitats, many farmers dig deep trenches and flood fields year-round. This shift from seasonal to permanent flooding reduces the availability of dry land, especially for winter crops like wheat, barley, and rye. That's a serious concern. While rice remains China's primary grain, with 207.5 million tons produced in 2024, wheat is close behind at 140.1 million tons. Wheat is essential for bread, noodles, dumplings, and other staples. Reducing wheat output could strain China's food security, especially as demand continues to rise. One striking example comes from the Yangtze River Basin, where over 1.6 million acres of rice and crayfish fields used to support winter wheat cultivation. Now, much of that land stays underwater year-round, making it unsuitable for wheat farming. And that's just one region. This growing tension between aquaculture and dry farming raises important questions. Can China strike a balance between maximizing income from crayfish and protecting long-term grain supplies? Can integrated systems evolve to support both summer and winter crops? Despite the challenges, China's crayfish experiment has captured the attention of the world. It's a rare example of an invasive species being transformed into a tool for sustainable farming, poverty alleviation, and even national pride. From obscure foreign invader to economic driver, crayfish have changed the face of rural China. They've turned remote counties into thriving communities, reduced reliance on chemical fertilizers, and offered a viable path for regenerating degraded land. In an era where global food security is under increasing pressure, China's integrated crayfish rice farming may offer a glimpse into the future of agriculture, not just for China, but for the world. After all, who would have thought that a little crustacean could carry such a heavy load, 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 carry such a heavy load?